Hi, my name is Chelsea Pinkstaff, and today we are going to talk about Johnson & Johnson and the Syrian humanitarian refugee crisis and just exactly how Johnson & Johnson has helped a crisis. First of all, though, I think in order for you to understand and grasp how much Johnson & Johnson has done, you kind of need to understand Johnson & Johnson as a company. And I know that sounds crazy. I know everybody thinks, oh, we know Johnson & Johnson. We've, you know, seen them everywhere. We've heard about them. Well, I thought the same thing too until I started doing some research, and I was blown away how large the company actually is. There's 265 different operating companies around the world in 60 different countries. That's huge. That's one of the largest companies I'm sure there is. The headquarters though is located here in the U.S. in New Brunswick, New Jersey. They are the sixth largest consumer health company and the sixth largest biologics company. Sorry, it's hard word to say. And the fifth largest pharmaceutical company. This means that not only does Johnson & Johnson deal with baby stuff, like we all usually can associate Johnson & Johnson with baby lotions, shampoos, body wash, that kind of thing, but they also are everywhere. They do skincare. Most of us will use like a Clean and Clear, Neutrogena, both made by Johnson & Johnson. Wound care, Band-Aid. Anytime you get a cut and you put some Neosporin on and then a Band-Aid, both those products are made by Johnson & Johnson. One product I was like, what? Off. The bug spray that I use on my family, my daughter, it's Family Care, is made by Johnson & Johnson as well. Anytime you have a headache, take Tylenol, Motrin, also made by Johnson & Johnson. It was just really crazy to me to see actually how large of a company Johnson & Johnson is and how many products they have out there that I just didn't even think of. Didn't even think for a second that, Johnson & Johnson could make the same thing I use on my daughter and the same thing I take whenever I have a headache. Anyways, they do. Also, Johnson & Johnson is among one of the largest corporate donors in the world. They donate roughly $900 million a year. In 2012, it was at $712 million. Still a lot of money. Last year, $966 million. So there's a little bit of a gap there, but Johnson & Johnson, it's roughly about $900 million a year, and that is both cash. That's all cash donations, but they also do non-monetary donations, meaning, they donate their time. Their employees donate their time at like the Red Cross or local fundraisers that are going on. And then corporate, at the corporate level, they also donate products like prescription pharmaceuticals, to patients that can't afford it. So I thought that was really, really a big deal. Johnson & Johnson also makes medical equipment and pharmaceuticals, and there's a lot of people that go in for something and they can't afford it. And if it's something somebody really needs, Johnson & Johnson is willing to donate that medicine or the use of a machine to a patient. Huge deal to me. So once I learned all that about Johnson & Johnson, it really came to no surprise to me that they announced a $1.75 million donation to the Syrian refugee crisis. Holy cow. That's a lot of money to donate to one cause. And that was my first thought was, do they really need all that? But once I started doing some research, again, on the Syrian refugee crisis, I was absolutely 100% blown away. I could not believe it. There is over 12 million people that are fleeing or being killed in Syria, because of the war in Syria that developed years ago. And there's so many dangers from fleeing. One of the dangers from fleeing Syria is being shot because of the war going on. A lot of people are fleeing through the night, and they're worried about snipers, shooting them because they don't want the Syrians to leave. They want them to stay there and join whatever. Not a political debate. We're not going there. Anyways, another danger is drowning. There's a huge, huge danger of drowning whenever they're fleeing to Europe over the Mediterranean Sea. The Mediterranean Sea. There's so many people packed into one little small boat that it's so easy for somebody to just go overboard and drown, especially children. Children have a very, very, very high risk of what's going to happen when, whenever they flee Syria. A lot of the times, children arrive alone. Either the parents wanted to get them out, wanted to make sure that the children were out and safe, safer, I guess, from Syria, or the parents were killed in the process of fleeing. There's so many different things that can happen, but the children have a really high risk of arriving alone to wherever they're fleeing to, for risk of trafficking, abuse, exploitation. It's never ending, and it's sad to think about. A lot of the refugees are fleeing to Iraq, Europe, Jordan, Lebanon, and Turkey. Those are just the host countries that are setting up places for them right around Syria. There's lots of other places, Syrians are trying to flee to, but those are the main ones. And it's crazy to think about all those dangers just from going from one country to another right next to it. But the biggest problem is once they're actually out of Syria, they have a really, really, really hard time of finding jobs. There's not very much legal work. A lot of people are trying to do odds and ends jobs to make rent and just everyday supplies that they're going to need: food, water, shelter, clothes, all those kinds of things. And it's very, very, very hard for the Syrians to find that work wherever they're at. Also, another big, big, big thing that happens is there's a lack of clean water once they're out, because there's just so many people in those small little countries, and a lot of them are countries with not a lot going on. So there's lack of clean water, which ups the risk of disease. Polio is one of the biggest ones that's spreading. Excuse me, can't shake this cold. And then the biggest thing for kids is there's a lack of schools. When they flee Syria, they're obviously taken out of their schools. So they've been out of school for a period of time. So that's a big thing. Also, it's really hard to find schools once they're somewhere else and they have gained shelter somewhere, because the schools are limited. There's so many kids and so many students that there's not enough schools for these kids. A lot of the schools have tried to break them up, morning and afternoon classes, and that's helped, but it hasn't done all of it. Also, the parents are having a hard time finding transportation for their kids to school. If they're having a hard time making rent and finding jobs and paying for those kinds of things, it makes sense that they're going to have trouble getting the kids to school. Thankfully, though, this is exactly where Johnson & Johnson has came into play. With their $1.75 million donation, Johnson & Johnson has donated through Save the Children, which is an organization that helps children all over the world and helps give them shelter and their immediate needs. And that's exactly what Johnson & Johnson wanted their money to go to, was the immediate humanitarian needs of those Syrian refugees, mainly children, but they're not symbolizing it that so much. Those needs that they're looking for are food, water, clothing, especially winter. With winter coming up, they're really, Johnson & Johnson really wanted to focus on that too. Safe shelter, and they really mean safe shelter, because a lot of these Syrian refugees are having to take shelter in abandoned buildings. That's really not a safe environment. So Johnson & Johnson wants part of their donation to go to finding safe areas for people to live. Also, educational programs. That's a big thing for Johnson & Johnson. They want, all the kids to be provided the opportunity for school and the opportunity to learn. So that's one of their many needs that, they want their money to go to. Also, mental health support. To me, that one stuck out. Really, really, really big thing. And it was so great at Johnson & Johnson. These kids and these families have been through so much. They're going to need a little bit of mental health support to get through it, and to know that that's not all life is right there, that there is other things out there. Johnson & Johnson has also announced a $10 million multi-year commitment to Save the Children, to help with the Syrian refugees and other needs of Save the Children, meaning, helping with newborn survival rates and local networking. And when I was researching this, I'm just absolutely blown away by Johnson & Johnson and their commitment to helping these children. And it takes, us taking a step back from our own lives and looking at this and saying, wow, it's a great thing that a company that we can see every day in our everyday life, stuff that we use, stuff that we need, the company that makes those things for us is also willing to help so many people out there. And it's just such a great thing. Thank you.